So can you, Mike, what was your most challenging development task? Is there something in your years that stood out to like, man, I didn't know what to do. This was really hard, but here's how we did it.
Good question, because there's been a number of them. I had one client that I basically worked with for over 20 years, and their managers would always want to have honest reports. Many times as FileMaker developers, we're asked to say, hey, I need to generate a report. I need to ask for something for this specific period of time, for these particular conditions, generate a report that breaks everything down. But then I got this request we want to know every client who has not done any business with us over 7 years and what that business was. And it was like, oh, I kind of have to think in the opposite terms of what I used to thinking. How am I going to find this information? But, figured it out, worked through it. An interesting challenge that I had at Beeswax that we just got done. So I guess this is another good one. Interesting problem-solving skills. So I have one company, which I've actually shown at another Portage Bay, the Connections Group, where this company basically services and generates and makes wells in Africa. And they got over 3,600 wells. And they wanted to do an analysis of how far apart each well was from each other, and then be able to display it on a Google map. And that was actually kind of challenging because each well, of course, is its own record. And for each record, that well had to look at all the wells around it to be able to figure out what was closest. And the first step was, well, how do we measure distance between wells? And we're working with latitude and longitude. And I actually asked ChatGPT for the formula for figuring distance.
We did just that not that long ago. Zandon and I did that. I wrote the Haversine formula using ChatGPT. It was good.
Yeah. And what was interesting, it gave me the formula, and it ended up that FileMaker did not have some of the trigonomic functions I needed. And but I asked ChatGPT, how could FileMaker create this custom function? And so I built that in, got that mileage, that distance to work, because you actually work with the curvature of the Earth on these.
So, that's a great circle distance. Yeah, right. It converts longitude and latitude to radians, and it's cool.
Yeah. And so. But the problem it still is that you have to compare this well with 3,500 other wells to find out what's close by. So you actually have to go through each record and analyze all 3,500 wells against it, which is a pretty time-consuming and intensive process. So I came up with a scheme that would actually pull up or calculate the distance on each record for all 3,500 records, which is a lot of work to do. And then I created a relationship that would show me only those wells that were within a particular distance in kilometers. And from that particular smaller group, I then created the JSON to generate the Google Maps. So what we shoved to Google Maps wasn't 3,500 sites, but only the nearby 5, 10, 15 sites would go into Google Maps. So that would be less API intensive. Then when you go on to the next record, you had to actually just throw out all that stuff that you did in the first record. You just threw it out, start over again in the next record. And of course, this was a really slow process. So we basically once I nailed down the process, we had to perform the script on server on a nightly, or on a weekly basis, basically. We didn't need to do this every day. So we have on Sunday night, just kind of take a couple hours on the server to go through there and update all the records, because they're also refining the latitude and longitude between all their wells. They every time they take a picture, there's a latitude and longitude thing that gets extrapolated. They're always refining and making sure that latitude and longitude is most accurate. So the whole system has to kind of go through this procedure on a weekly basis, but it's there, it's fast, and it works. So, I mean, that was a challenge. It was a challenge, and I asked other developers, "Can you think of a faster way to do this?" And everybody said, "No, this is a kind of a genius way to do that. You know, just find all that information about 3,500 wells, and then throw away what you don't need, and move on to the next record." And so, I guess that was the most recent challenge.